Hey, Eric.
Hey, John. How's it going tonight?
It is going well.
I'm stealing your line.
I only have a few lines. I do the same thing over and over again. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. Well, Happy New Year. Happy New Year. 2024. Yeah. Hard to believe.
And we started this in 2017. Makes it seem longer than it actually has been.
That does seem like a long time ago.
Yeah, I think it was. And I think we actually started talking about it in like 2016.
Yeah.
So.
Crazy.
It's been a while.
Crazy sauce.
It's
crazy
been a
sauce.
while.
You're old. You're old. I couldn't be that old. Oh, it's all good.
Pot and kettle.
I know. Well, what are you going to say? What are you going to say?
Yeah.
What are you going to say? It's all good. It's all good. It's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun.
Exactly. No. Well, I feel a little guilty. I think I've started out this will be the third podcast in a row. I complain about something that has happened at my house.
Uh-oh.
So what was it? The last weeks were the water pressure and water leaks. And I don't remember the other one, but I just remember,
well, your oven,
my wife
your
calling
oven was
me.
Broken.
Oh, the oven. That's right. It was the oven.
Yeah.
So the oven and then the water pressure. And then my wife calling me from a parking garage at Bridgeport, which is an outdoor mall, saying, they come in threes, honey. I'm like, oh no.
What's up?
Yep, the car won't start. And so this is my boy's. It's a old Honda CRV. And it just has to last 6 more months till he goes away to college, and then we'll sell it. It's just the kid car that we need to get so that, anyways.
Right.
So she calls me up and says, it won't start. And she's on FaceTime, and I am diagnosing the problem over FaceTime, going, that sounds like a battery problem, because it was turning over, it just wouldn't start. So in the mall parking lot, in a parking garage at the mall parking lot, I have to push her. I drive my daughter's little pickup truck up, park, push her out, stretch the jumper cables as far as they'll go. Fortunately, we were kind of at the end of the aisle, the entrance to the one-way part of the aisle, so people would start to turn, they would see it was blocked and continue to the next aisle over. So,
as opposed to the end,
yeah,
you got 10 people lined up that can't back up and can't go forward.
Exactly. So for silver linings, that there's the silver lining. Anyway, so got it jumped and started, and I had called the Honda dealer and said, and they're like, we can't see it today, but if you drop it off, we'll do it first thing in the morning. So they, of course, look at it first thing in the morning, and $100 later, inform me they found absolutely nothing wrong with it. And if I wanted to spend
I could take
more
$100
money,
from you and tell you that I didn't find
exactly.
anything.
Exactly. But they said, if I wanted to pay them more money, they'll go see if they call it they did find that the cables to the battery were loose. And I'm like, would that cause a problem? And they're like, maybe. The loose cable to the positive end of the battery could, I'm like,
it's more likely to be not at all than intermittent. But
yeah. But the battery is a brand new battery. So it's a new battery, because anyways, if they ask for more money, and they'll look for what they call a parasitic draw, meaning something is off but still pulling from the battery, and so the battery slowly dies. Because if we start it twice a day, which is what my boy does, he gets up in the morning, drives to school, then comes home from school, it seems to start just fine most of the time. So, like I said, I'm just like,
so did you
please
pay
let it
for
last
the
another 6
parasitic
months.
test, or did you?
No, I did not. I said,
test?
I did not, but I kept it, and I said, hey, if this happens again, can I just bring it in and with this paper to show you've already done the first stuff?
Already done the basics.
Go right to you've already done the basic stuff and found nothing. Can you go right to that and just charge me the extra money for that instead of no worries.
So next time, instead of paying the $100, you'll pay the $150 for the extensive test.
Yeah, whatever.
You're like,
for
can I just give you the
be
extra $50? No.
Yeah.
No, that's not how this works.
Yeah, that's and then they'll say, yes, you have a bad headlight, which is wiring, faulty wiring, which is, I don't know whatever they're going to say. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm like, just let's let it last. So we did not pay the extra money, and it's at home and it's been working fine since, but that was this past weekend.
It's hard to not have something you don't trust, though. That's actually totally why we traded in my mother-in-law's old car for something else, just because it I'm sure had what you were calling a parasitic draw. Because if I started it I didn't even have to start it every day. If I just ran it like once a week, it was fine. But if I let it sit for like 2 weeks, it would be dead.
Yeah.
Dead.
So, yeah. So that basically boiled down to a certain person in the household never driving that to the outdoor mall parking garage again, which is fine.
Yeah.
She has her own car, which the only reason she took the boy's car was because it was stacked up behind hers, and she was like,
that's the problem when
back his out of the driveway.
You don't have to play car Jenga.
Yeah.
Or car Tetris.
Yes,
I'm
playing
not sure
card. Yeah, either way. Tetris, Jenga. Yeah. So anyways, that was my fun weekend. But we did have a Happy New Year. We mostly kind of sat around the house, watched a little bit of the New Year's Eve party, reminded ourselves we're glad we're not crammed in New York Times Square. No matter how exciting watching the ball drop might be, it's not on my bucket list to go do that. Just looking at the mass of humanity. Well, and they were showing like people have to line up 2 days in advance, and they have rules that apparently people wear adult diapers because if you leave to go to the bathroom, you can't get back in line because they won't let people cut line. I'm like, well, how desperate do you have to be for 2 days? Well, the morning before or the afternoon before, whenever you can start lining up outside, and then they let you in 24 hours in advance. And those are the people that I don't know. I just watched something and heard something, adult diapers, and I'm like, that's no.
And I'm out.
I don't care what you're doing. I am not going to enjoy New Year's as an infant. So, anyways,
well,
it was fun.
You just the way you said a minute ago about checking their battery, and they're like, that's not how this works.
Yeah,
I like it's completely orthogonal, but my wife and I went to lunch one of the days off last week, and I found a place that had, it turns out it was really good brisket, but at least on the menu, they had, it was, do you want brisket or burnt ends? It was either or. And then they had some other stuff, but then they also had a choose two that was like significantly more expensive for, and it wasn't like quite by the pound, but anyway. And so the waiter comes, and I'm the worst person to go to lunch with because I totally ask for exactly what I want, which is not necessarily on the menu. So the waiter comes up, and I'm like, so can I get like half burnt ends and half brisket? He's like, no, that's what the buy two is for, which was like $35 instead of $20 for the same amount of meat. I'm like, okay, so that's not what I'm going to do. And then he's like, sorry, that's what that other thing's for. They want to get their money.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, fine. Well, it says the side can be jalapeno or can be mac and cheese. And out on the board out front, you said that your special is jalapeno mac and cheese. Can I have the jalapeno mac and cheese as the side? And he's like, nope, that's a meal only. I'm like, dang it. Okay. So fortunately for him, the brisket was delicious. Delicious. So I was like, oh man, I'm so coming back here. So
you'll have to tell me where that is.
Yeah. Well, it's a long hike for you because it was in Forest Grove. So
okay.
It's like the Black Dog Bar and Saloon or something like that. Black Dog Bar and Grill.
Okay.
Which, whatever. Anyway, it was super good though, and
oh yeah,
I'm in Forest Grove more than you are, I know, and so we will be going back because I gotta try some of the other stuff there. But anyway, it was just like, yeah, that's not how this works. John? my wife's like smacking her forehead like, come on, who are you? Who are you and why am I still with you? Anyway.
Yeah, see, you're the opposite of my daughter. She went out to dinner and it took a long time to get her food, and her food came out and it was cold. And I'm like, well, did you send it back? She's like, no, I just ate it. I'm like, why? It's cold.
I will tip really well. I
I
promise.
didn't want to
I promise.
bother him.
I will tip really well. But my wife used to work as a server at a restaurant, so she's like, no specials, no special orders, nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm paying for this, and I will happily tip for this, and I just want to be happy.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. No, my daughter's the same. She was a hostess at a restaurant and in high school, and so she's like, Dad, here's the things you don't do, and she lists off the things that pretty much I do all the time. Like, don't ask for a specific table or a booth because it's all the serve. And I'm like,
sorry,
but I want a booth if they're available. Sorry.
Exactly.
Anyways, we're horrible. Like all the hostesses and waiters out and wait staff out there are cursing us as we speak.
Exactly. Well, in the interest of complaining about what's going wrong, though, my stinking dishwasher broke again. And
is it literally stinking, or that's a figure?
It is not.
Of speech.
It is figuratively.
Okay.
It is making noise though, so it is not a pleasant noise. And in the interest of, I just replaced this part like 2 months ago. I know it was August 11th because I looked at my Amazon order history, and it was not getting water inside anymore. And so I was like, oh, is it the filter? It didn't seem to be the filter. So there's this inlet valve that I had replaced before, but I was like, well, maybe the cheap one on Amazon didn't work, so I should just buy another one of the cheap ones on Amazon because it worked for a while. And I figured if that was it, then I would have a working... I know it's a definition of insanity, but I figured that it worked for a while. So if it was it again, then I could get it fixed for $18 and then go down and buy order like a real part, which is going to come out of the same stinking factory.
Right.
Off of, from...
Third time's a charm.
But no, I replaced it tonight and it did not fix it. So now I have an appointment for the appliance place, but they can't come out till next Friday. So now I've got a week and a half.
You have to hand wash your dishes like a heathen.
What is this? This is a travesty. I don't know what to say. So anyway, it is what it is. So
alrighty.
Yeah. How about topics?
Well, mine is actually kind of something fun and cybersecurity.
Two things at once.
I stumbled across this one, and it's a NASA article who has now released the first iteration of its Space Security's Best Practices Guide. So they're trying to bolster mission cybersecurity efforts for both the public sector and the private sector space activities. All
right.
Which I thought, well, this is kind of cool. And so...
Write software with no bugs.
Yeah. And build hardware with no anyways, I'll read a couple of quotes here and then tell you what I actually learned, because it is a book. I mean, it's like a whole book. It's all online, but it's big. But anyway, so the quote. So at NASA, this is Misty Finnical, the Deputy Principal Advisor for Enterprise Protection at NASA. At NASA, we recognize the importance of protecting our space missions from potential threats and vulnerabilities. This guide represents a collective effort to establish a set of principles that will enable us to identify and mitigate risks and ensure continued success of our missions, both in Earth's orbit and beyond.
Both in Earth's orbit and beyond.
Yes.
Come on. There's not many places that get to say that for real.
And beyond.
For real.
That's right.
Yes, we have intersolar system network.
Yeah. So anyways, and it talks about, hey, new systems, especially complex systems like what you would assume going to space would be, can have vulnerabilities. So what are the best practices you should follow? Blah, 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 blah. Anyways, the book is like, so I kind of perused through it a little bit, but the thing I stumbled across that I thought was really fun was the lesson. Each chapter has a lesson learned section. And so you can, so picture this as here's the standards or the best practices,
the recommendations.
And then it gives you a little quote on the lessons learned that brought us to this point.
Oh, okay.
And so I'll read a couple of them here. So this one is the probable scenario for Mars polar lander mission loss. Lesson learned number 938. All right. NASA lost the polar lander Mars Polar Lander mission in 1998 because not all hardware operational characteristics were captured in the software requirements, and because software test procedures did not take into account retest needs after software changes following a test failure. The MPL flight software did not take into account certain known hardware characteristics. The resulting mission-critical failure modes were not detected during the testing of the spacecraft. It was known that the touchdown sensor, so this is how they figured, the error that occurred. Mm-hmm. It was known that the touchdown sensors generated false momentary signals at leg deployment. So when it deploys the legs, it generates a false signal, a false positive. The transient behavior was not properly accounted for in the software design. So it is believed, so this is what they think happened, why it failed, that the momentary signals that were recorded as valid touchdown events resulted in the engine shutting down at an altitude of 40 meters, and the resultant free fall to the surface of Mars was viewed as the probable cause of the December 1999 MPL mission loss.
Oh,
anyways,
you get like all the way to Mars. You get all the way through the atmosphere.
Exactly.
You get 100 feet above the ground, and you're like, you know what I should do right now? I should shut my engine off. Let's go free fall.
Yeah, I deployed the legs, and the legs deployed, saying, "Hey, we're deployed," meaning we're on the ground. Anyways,
yeah.
So, oops, we actually aren't on the ground yet. And then the second one was the Mars Climate Orbiter in 1999. Had deficiencies in its mission-critical software. That upon arrival at Mars in September of 1999, the MCO began a scheduled 16-minute Mars orbit insertion maneuver to achieve orbit approximately 49 seconds before the anticipated occultation. I don't read that word right. Occultation by Mars. Communication was lost and never reestablished. The root cause of the mission error was an error in the SM_Forces program output files. The JPL MCO review board determined that the files containing the magnitudes of the small impulses applied to the spacecraft had been delivered by the spacecraft operations team to the spacecraft navigation team in English units, pound force per second, instead of the specified metric units, Newton seconds.
Uh-huh.
So the erroneous engineering units provided by these files to the navigation software, because it was just numbers, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
They didn't,
Units matter.
Were not discovered on any of the walkthroughs of requirements, design, code, and testing. The software management development plan was not followed in the walkthroughs of the SM Forces software, and the overall training in the software process was not adequate. Specifically, required persons were not always in attendance, and the software interface specification was not used, minutes were not taken, and action items were not published. So, oops, get all the way to Mars, and you discover that it was in English units, not metric units. Bummer. So anyways, it was kind of fun to read a couple of the, some of the lessons learned for each of the different space best practices guide, space security best practices guide. So, anywho, that's what I brought today.
That's super cool.
It was fun.
I've read at least that the, dollars per line of code for something like NASA is incredibly high compared to other industries, as it should be.
For reasons.
Yeah. Reasons.
Yeah.
But, it's a joke, right? It's not like we're building rockets. Oh, well, maybe sometimes we are. And the tricky
sometimes
bit too
is
actually
rocket
deploying
scientists.
A software update to a spaceship is a procedure that you want to be successful an extraordinarily high percentage of the time. Okay, yeah. Okay, I pulled this down, but that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
And there's a lot of stuff linked in through there. That book has references to a lot of things, and there's a whole rabbit hole you can go down if you want to see NASA failures. I'm sure there's probably a book on Amazon on, famous NASA failures that I could just go get, but it was kind of fun to follow the rabbit hole for a while.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. That's really cool. Okay, my topic tonight is actually, it could have been follow-up. It probably should have been follow-up, but I thought there was enough new data here. I'm just going to use it as my topic. Because I talked about this in episode 287, 290, and 308. So this is the Operation Triangulation, which is where a whole bunch of the Kaspersky employees, and turns out a lot of other people in the Russian-speaking area got infected with similar spyware. But this is a Kaspersky article that was released last week, it's based on a talk, but it's Ars Technica article that is based on a talk that was given last week of the year, that had some additional information in here about some of the exploits, including the exploit chain, which I'll go through kind of at the very, very end. But one of the things, the way this opens is that it says, because we talked about this before, but chief among the discoveries, and this I don't think we had talked about before, the unknown attackers were able to achieve an unprecedented level of access by exploiting a vulnerability in an undocumented hardware feature that few, if anyone, outside of Apple and chip suppliers such as ARM Holdings knew of. The sophistication and the feature's obscurity suggest the attackers had advanced technical capabilities. Our analysis hasn't revealed how they became aware of this feature, but we're exploring all possibilities, including accidental disclosure in past firmware or source code releases. They may also have stumbled upon it through hardware reverse engineering. So, hardware capabilities, meaning, at least how I interpreted some of the other stuff was said in there, is essentially there were operations, instructions, the ability to write to specific memory mapped registers for additional capabilities in the chipset that were not used by the OS firmware, not used by any other software, but known by the attackers to be available in the hardware and were leveraged. So, I mean, that's sort of next level exploit. So let's see. It says the mass backdooring campaign, which according to Russian officials also infected the iPhones of thousands of people working inside diplomatic missions and embassies in Russia, came to light in June. Over a span of at least 4 years, Kaspersky said the infections were delivered in iMessage texts that installed malware through a complex exploit chain without requiring the receiver to take any action. So this is the zero-click exploit, which was why this kind of came to my attention earlier. Literally, I think the first episode we talked about this in was back in June or whatever. Yeah, episode 287. So they never did achieve persistence with this. It's just that even though the infections didn't survive a reboot, the attackers would send a new text, shortly after the phone was rebooted that reinfected it. One of the first things that the exploit did was remove fingerprints of the initial exploit. So it was difficult to track. Another thing in here that I don't think was obvious before, it says besides affecting iPhones, these critical 0 days and the secret hardware function resided in Macs, iPods, iPads, Apple TVs, and Apple Watches. One of the things, since they're all based on the essentially the A or M cores.
Right.
What's more, the exploits Kaspersky recovered were intentionally developed to work with those devices as well. So, it was a multi-platform exploit. Apple declined to comment, of course, as I guess is Apple's way. But the last thing I really wanted to pull out of this is to talk about the exploit chain, because it's really extensive. I did pull out one other thing. It said currently we cannot conclusively attribute the cyber attack to any known threat actor. The unique characteristics observed in Operation Triangulation don't align with patterns of known campaigns, making attribution challenging at this stage. So here's the exploit chain. So attackers send a malicious iMessage attachment, which is processed by the application without showing any signs to the user. The attachment exploits a vulnerability in the undocumented Apple-only TrueType font instruction adjust for a remote code execution. This instruction has existed since the early 90s, but the patch to fix this 0 day removed it. It then uses return-oriented programming multiple stages written in, it says NS expression, NS predicate query language, patches the JavaScript core library environment to execute a privilege escalation exploit written in JavaScript. You love JavaScript.
It's always JavaScript's fault.
No, it's always DNS, but maybe it's JavaScript in DNS. So the JavaScript exploit is obfuscated to make it completely unreadable and to minimize its size. Still, it's about 11,000 lines of code dedicated to JavaScript core and kernel memory parsing and manipulation.
Wow.
That's a lot of JavaScript.
Wow.
Especially minified and obfuscated.
Obfuscated, yeah.
It exploited JavaScript core's debugging feature, $VM, to get the ability to manipulate JavaScript core's memory from the script and execute native API functions. Supported both old and new phones and had a pointer authentication code bypass for exploitation of newer models, because that's one of the hardware protection features added in later. I think it's in the CPUs. Had a integer overflow vulnerability in XNU's memory mapping syscalls that it leveraged to get read-write access to the whole physical memory of the device from user level. And then it used that hardware error, the hardware memory mapped IO registers, to bypass page protection layer. So that's the other hardware feature that was introduced so that you could protect memory pages from being written to, but it used this special memory mapped registers to be able to write to memory that it shouldn't have been able to write to otherwise. So after exploiting all the vulnerabilities, the JavaScript exploit can do whatever it wants to the device. The first thing it does is launch the IM agent process and inject a payload to clean the exploitation artifacts from the device, and then run Safari in invisible mode and forward to a web page with the next stage. And then that next stage verifies the victim, and if they want to, receives the Safari exploit. Safari uses a different exploit to execute shellcode, and then from there they basically run a final exploit to get root privileges and can have full access to the device. So I mean the number of stages and the exploit chain there is pretty amazing. It said, let's see, the last quote from Laren was, we discover and analyze new exploits and attacks using them on a daily basis. We've discovered and reported more than 30 in the wild 0 days in Apple, Adobe, Google, Microsoft products. But this is definitely the most sophisticated attack chain we've ever seen. And I can buy that. I could buy that.
Looks pretty complicated.
So there you go. That's. I don't know that this is the last thing that we'll hear about triangulation. I'm sure there's others, but I'll try to put them as follow-up if necessary. But this is it's a good long article with a lot of details on Ars Technica, as I guess you'd expect from Ars. So
nice.
So there you go.
Well, sticking with the space theme, my something fun.
Okay.
I went from a book to an image, which both things are great for podcasts.
Okay.
So January 3rd, the NASA telescopes start the year with a double bang. So this is a really cool picture, and it's an image that shows different types of light containing not one, but at least two exploded stars. So the supernova is the supernova remnant is known as 30 Doradus B, or 30 Dor B for short, and is part of a larger region of space where stars have been continuously forming for the past 8 to 10 million years. It is a complex landscape of dark clouds of gas, young stars, high-energy shocks, and superheated gas located 160,000 light-years away from Earth in the Large Magellanic Cloud, a small satellite galaxy of the Milky Way. And I will put the picture as the album art, the cover art for this section.
That is really cool.
But it is a super cool image. And the article that will also link to this has a bunch of details on how it was put together. It used a whole bunch of data to put together.
Looks like it used the Chandra X-ray Observatory.
Yeah.
So very cool.
Fun stuff. It was a cool picture. I had a different thing up there, and then I was like, nah, I'm just going to stick with the space thing for my something
Space
fun.
is good. There's nothing wrong with space.
Space is fun. There you go.
Okay, well, this is the start of the new year. Lots of stuff. Lots of reflection for what happened in 23. Lots of thinking forward. What's going to happen in 24. But my something fun is an article I read last week about 66 good news stories you didn't hear about in 23, which isn't entirely true because I read a number of these and even a couple of them made it into my something funs. So, but nowhere close to 66 of them. There's a bunch of stuff. So I pulled out 5 out of this, but obviously there are many, many, many more. But just as an example, like their number 1 was that a record number of countries eliminated diseases this year. Egypt became the first country to eliminate hepatitis C, which is crazy given it used to have the highest burden in the world. The Maldives became the first country to eliminate leprosy. Bangladesh, the first country to eliminate black fever, and also eliminated elephantiasis. Niger became the first African country to eliminate river blindness. Benin, Mali, Iraq eliminated trachoma. Timor-Leste, Bhutan, and North Korea eliminated rubella. Ghana eliminated sleeping sickness, and Azerbaijan, Tajikistan, and Belize eliminated malaria. That's awesome.
Nice.
A lot of progress on that. My number 2 that I pulled out is that we're winning the war on AIDS. So, and they had a great graph associated with this. 2 decades ago, the disease seemed unstoppable, killing 2 million people a year. Today, it's a different story. In July, the United Nations revealed in 22 deaths fell to 630,000, with an estimated 1.3 million new infections, the lowest since the early 90s, and only 130,000 new infections in children, the lowest since the 1980s. There's also been notable progress on the legal front, with several countries removing laws preventing access for marginalized groups in the last 2 years. And I think this is largely due to the medications, that have come out in the last couple years. Third thing I pulled out was CRISPR, which we've already talked about. But that the first CRISPR treatments are officially approved, and there will be, there's certainly a whole pipeline of more coming. And my last 2 that I pulled out were about solar and battery technology. So solar installations, it says, changed our climate future. So in 2023, it said, let's see, here's the quote: humanity will install an astonishing 413 gigawatts of solar this year, 58% more than in 22, which itself marked an almost 42% increase from 21. It means the world's solar capacity has doubled in the last 18 months, and that solar is now the fastest growing energy technology in history. In September, the IEA announced that solar voltaic installations are now ahead of the trajectory required to reach net zero by 2050, and that if solar maintains this kind of growth, it will become the world's dominant source of energy before the end of the decade. That's nice. Pretty cool. I did not pull out of here, but one of the other ones, and I don't have it in front of me, but I think it said that China, there was something else about China, but that China had installed 300 gigawatts of solar. So China basically installed 300 of the 413. But,
oh, wow.
But good, because, we want China to be lower on the carbon output.
Yeah.
So, and then the final thing I pulled out, and there's let's see, how many? 66, and I did 5. So there's 61 additional things in this article. But the final thing I pulled out was that battery technology made big leaps forward. CATL, the world's biggest battery maker, announced a new battery with double the density of Tesla's batteries, which it said would go into mass production imminently. Toyota claimed it developed a solid-state battery with only over 1,000 kilometers range, and then got trumped by Chinese EV maker NIO, which pulled off an actual demo of a 1,000-kilometer battery, and Swedish manufacturer Northvolt announced a breakthrough in sodium batteries, an element that's cheaper, more abundant, and more sustainable than lithium. So your flow battery didn't
lots
make
of
it
salt
into
around.
But
yeah, the flow battery.
I don't think that's as far ahead as these
2024 thing.
or something. But anyway,
Cool.
this was my,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to read through all those.
It's kind of a looking forward thing, or no, I guess this is looking backward. Like lots of progress for the larger humanity.
I do appreciate the graphic that's on
I almost pulled that out.
the top of the story.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh.
It's here's where things are, all of the problems, and it's a thing pointing. It's from space. It's pointing at the planet Earth, and then down below, it's got an arrow pointing back to Earth, saying also all of the solutions. Exactly.
So I did not pull this out as my something fun or as one of the things to do, but scroll down since you've got the article in front of you and look at number 22 and the graph for number 22. So that's comparing
22.
It's comparing what we need to do from an extraction point to replace.
Oh. Oh, wait. It keeps going.
It's like a Neil.fun.
I keep scrolling.
It's like a Neil.fun graphic.
It's still going. That's very clever. Well done. Well done. That's a good one.
Yeah. No. So yeah. The point is that in order to transition to a complete green future, we need to. Oh, I'm trying to. It's like moving from. Shoot. What's the start? It's the start number. It's like 5 million tons of lithium, copper, and cobalt to 28 million tons is what we need to move to. But the problem is that would replace then 15 billion tons of coal, oil, and natural gas, or at least a significant fraction of it. And when you compare without changing, like say to a log scale, 28 million to 15 billion, it's a long, tall graph. So anyway, it's fun. Check out the article. 66 things that were massive progress in 23 and good, happy stories.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right, John.
All right. Have a great evening, Eric. And I will catch you later.
I will talk to you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye.